So we're going to come back and zone in on some interesting tax announcements yesterday, including the sugar tax. But first, yesterday's budget highlighting the tight condition that our economy finds itself in, and a decision from another part of this continent could make it much worse. Nigerian authorities are reportedly discussing an embargo on imports from South Africa and various other countries into Nigeria, where the goods can be produced locally. Nigeria is one of South Africa's biggest trading partners on the continent, of course. Let's discuss. We're joined by our Nigerian correspondent, Sophia Adengo. Sophia, good afternoon to you. Is this really on the cards?
Well, you know, Francis, it's interesting that you have mentioned that Nigeria and South Africa are their biggest trade partners on the continent. What Nigeria has come up with in terms of their administration in harnessing their local products and supporting them is what they call an import prohibition list. And on this list is a long list of about 41 consumer goods that have now been limited in terms of imports. And a lot of these goods are from South Africa. Many of them, you know, depend on South African imports. For example, sugar, you know, boxed juices, soaps and detergents. It's also interesting to know that major retailers are also seeing the big brunt of some of these goods that are limited in terms of import. And of course, definitely this is in the cards for Nigeria and South Africa, dependent on this prohibition list. Francis?
How soon could this happen? This is a blow for companies. This is a huge market.
Francis, this has already gone into the works of you know, limiting these imported goods. Nigerian authorities are not wasting time in really understanding that a lot of these goods, although are produced in the country, have not seen this level of protectionism. And so this measure has gone in effect right away by the Nigerian authorities. Many of the retailers that we have seen here in Abuja, you know, the Federal Capital Territory and beyond, have really limited what it is that they're able to supply to their consumers based on this prohibition list. So there, of course, has been an immediate effect because of these measures.
Wow. So does it seem like South Africa is being targeted specifically, perhaps? We know that there's been tensions about regulation with MTN, concerns about DSTV, concerns about the dominance of various South African companies in Nigeria.
Well, Francis, I think what the Nigerian government and South African government are alluding to is the fear of the dominance of South African business here in Nigeria. No doubt Nigeria has the market with over 180 million people to serve. Although, you know, with Nigerian companies, there is a fair competing ground, because Nigerian companies have to compete with South African companies that pay incredible tax in this country, and not to mention also have a different strata when it comes to competing here in Nigeria. But there is an underlying fear that South African companies can come in and take over in many areas. But you know, the formation of the Nigerian South African Chamber of Commerce is really supposed to smooth out those fears and really help both companies in Nigeria and South Africa, you know, sort of coexist, gaining soft skills that are taken to South Africa, and South Africa bringing you know, their business here in order to improve the employment climate in Nigeria. So there's a symbiotic relationship that ideally is supposed to take place. But of course, there are underlying disgruntled you know, Nigerian companies that feel that South African companies have taken over in the area of retail and in the area of banking and the telecom sector in the largest way possible, taking the larger share of the market. Francis?
Well, we will be looking out for the reaction from that business chamber. Finally, President Jacob Zuma will be visiting Nigeria, I understand, early next month. Are these sorts of issues likely to come up?
Francis, I can speculate that indeed trade relations would definitely need to be on the table if we were to give an outlook of what President Zuma's agenda will look like. And also, this would probably be the first time since President Muhammad Buhari took office back in May that South Africa and Nigeria have come to the limelight in order to discuss, how both countries are major players on the continent. So that will also be highlighted. There is also a political and security issue going on here in Nigeria, and no doubt President Zuma will weigh in on those type of issues. So it's bound to be a very interesting, dialogue, interesting meeting that, of course, we're keeping on top of, and we'll be reporting on these developments to really understand what the outcome of this visit will be here in Nigeria.
Thank you very much, Sophia Adengo, our correspondent reporting live from Abuja. An interesting development. We know that MTN has been under strain, talk of limiting DSTV's dominance, and a whole host of South African companies could be affected by that decision.